morning, everyone. My name is Dominique COF, and today I'm going to be speaking about coral reef endangerment. So around the world, millions of people visit the beach each year. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, in 2010, 58.67 million people visited the beach in America alone. I think we can all agree that most people who visit the beach use sunscreen to prevent from skin damage and skin cancer. But what we don't realize is that the sunscreen soaks into the water and can be extremely harmful. Coral reefs have been called the rainforest of the sea because they house 25% of the diverse marine population in the ocean. However, they only make up 1% of the ocean's environment. That being said, coral reefs are on the verge of extinction. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has included many types of coral on the red list of threatened species. This is due to a chemical present in many sunscreen products. That chemical is called oxybenzone. For some clarification, oxybenzone is a naturally occurring chemical which absorbs UV rays and is included in most sunscreen products. So today my proposition is that the main threat to the endangerment of coral reefs is caused by people using sunscreen with the ingredient oxybenzone when swimming in the ocean. So my first point today is that oxybenzone is present in a large amount of sunscreen products. 2, even in diluted forms, oxybenzone is found to damage coral. And 3, oxybenzone can have detrimental effects on coral. So for my first point, oxybenzone is found in more than 3,500 types of sunscreen products, which is stated in the Archives of Environmental Contamination and Toxicology. Of those sunscreen products, oxybenzone makes up between 1 and 10% of the total ingredients included in those sunscreen products. In 2016, sunscreen manufacturing in the U.S. alone made a total revenue of about $394 million. From 2011 to 2016, the annual growth in the sunscreen market increased by 2.6%. According to a survey by the Consumer Reports National Research Center, 2/3 of Americans reported that they are occasional users of sunscreen. So this allows you to visualize the large amounts of sunscreen which enter our environment, including the ocean, since it can be assumed that more amounts of sunscreen are used when people are at the beach and swimming in the ocean. This brings me to my second point. According to the U.S. National Park Service, in diluted forms as low as 62 parts per trillion, oxybenzone can still be harmful to coral reefs. Dr. Omri Bronstein, study author and researcher of the Tel Aviv University Department of Zoology, simplifies this for us by stating that this is equivalent to a drop of water into an Olympic-sized pool. This means that only 1 drop of oxybenzone into an Olympic pool-sized body of water is enough to have negative effects on coral. Currently, somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 tons of sunscreen enter coral reef areas around the world each year, according to the U.S. National Park Service. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, Hawaii, and Israel, scientists from the World Resource Institute found oxybenzone in quantities 12 times higher than that of the minimum concentration needed to impact coral. This means that coral was found with 12 times the dangerous amount of oxybenzone present, so 12 times that 1 drop of water into a pool. This brings me to my third point. According to the Archives of Environmental Contamination and Toxicology, oxybenzone damages the DNA of coral. These DNA changes lead to terminal problems for the coral by restricting their ability to reproduce. So as I stated in the introduction, the coral cannot reproduce at a fast enough pace to replenish its population. This is why the species is facing endangerment. The change in DNA also causes deformities which result in death, such as endocrine disruptions, causing young coral to encase themselves in their own skeleton, which ultimately leads to death. And another deformity includes the coral mouths expanding to 5 times the normal healthy size for them to thrive in their environment. The disruption of DNA also includes coral bleaching. To clarify, coral bleaching is when the coral begins to starve because the algae that live inside their tissues and provide 90% of their energy is expelled. So the coral lose their nutrients, and this makes the coral turn white or brown, meaning it is no longer alive. In a report from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in 2014, The ongoing bleaching of coral is the worst and longest bleaching event ever recorded. Reefs from Florida to Australia have been affected by the detrimental coral bleaching, and the event has no end in sight. So I'm going to present a counter-argument, and it's common that global warming has also been found to cause harm to coral reefs. However, the oxybenzone propels these events, and it causes more harm to the coral. So based on the provided facts that 1, oxybenzone is present in a large amount of sunscreen products, 2, even in diluted forms, oxybenzone is found to damage coral, and 3, oxybenzone can have detrimental effects on coral. It can be concluded that sunscreen which contains the ingredient oxybenzone is the main reason coral reefs are endangered. Thank you.
All right, Dominique, I think the introductory material talks about why this is significant and why people should be listening to this particular argument. I do think you need to explain a little bit more what the dispute is, because at the end you make a reference to global warming as a potential alternative causality, but it never gets discussed very clearly when you talk about that. And that might be something that shows that there's controversy as to what the biggest threat is here at the beginning of the speech, and that might make it a little bit more clear why it's an argument and not just an informative presentation. You did a good job previewing what the secondary points were and creating a justification for us to listen. The proposition is a little complicated because you've got kind of some conditional things built into it, like a couple of conditional things built into it. So if it could be simplified, I think that would be better. Like I said, good layout of what the supporting structures are going to be. Now, it was a little bit awkward, though, when you got to the supporting structures. Basically, you just reminded us, okay, here's on my first point, and you didn't remind us of what the claim was. You just started presenting the evidence. Now, if people were listening closely and they're paying attention, they'll think back to what you were saying and hopefully connect it with what the claim was. You can't depend on people. We're very unreliable. Listeners are terrible. People are bad listeners, and so sometimes you have to repeat those points. So yeah, so repeat the claim that you're making on those particular points, and it'll be a lot clearer. I thought, like I said, you did transition between the points, and now to my second point, and it's clear that we're on the third point, that sort of thing. But like when you get to the third point, I'm not going to remember what it was that you previewed at the beginning, so if you don't say it, that's a little bit of a problem. I can infer what it is from the evidence that you're presenting, but you don't want us to be creating your speech. You want us to hear what you are saying on those particular points. The evidence I thought was very good. You had consistent slur citations, excellent authorities that you were quoting, a lot of good statistical information on the point that you've got. The only thing that I thought was underdeveloped when it came to the content of the speech was your kind of built-in rebuttal argument, which mentions global warming as a potential competing issue, and then it just says, but oxybenzene contributes to that, and that's as much as I get. I don't get any argument on that. There's no evidence on it. There's no explanation on it. So I think you either need to take that out, or like I said, maybe suggest that global warming is sometimes accused of being the cause of this. Put that at the beginning and say, but the real big issue is this particular point that you're talking about. The only thing that I think is a little bit weak about the presentation is you're really doing a lot of reading. Yeah. It comes across like I've got a great essay here and I'm going to read my essay out loud, and you could talk to us a little bit more. Now it's clearly organized, good evidence on that sort of thing. It needs a little bit of work on the delivery. Okay, thank you.